The Jehovah's Witnesses have just updated their secret Elders Manual that goes through all the sometimes hidden rules that all Jehovah's Witnesses have to follow. And this isn't a small change or update where they change a bit of wording at the end of a chapter. This is a completely new Shepherd the Flock of God book, going from 30 chapters to just 17 chapters and half of the length. So let's go through what's there, what they cut out, and why they're re-releasing the most sinister book in the entire cult. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and let's begin with a quick overview of both manuals. The 2024 manual needed a rewrite after all of the changes that the Jehovah's Witnesses have done to their cult. Not only have they changed behavioral rules, like what people are allowed to wear to the Kingdom Hall and their updated higher education views.
Under our new arrangement, 2 elders will meet with the minor and his Christian parents. The elders will find out what steps the parents have already taken to help their child come to repentance. The governing body has decided that the committee may decide to meet with the person more than once. The governing body has decided that publishers can use their Bible-trained conscience to decide whether to give a simple greeting and welcome a disfellowshipped individual who attends a congregation meeting.
Is it appropriate for Christians to pursue additional education? With this update, we'd like to clarify our understanding. While there are dangers involved in pursuing certain forms of education, basically, whether to obtain additional education or not is a matter for personal decision.
The governing body has asked me to read the following announcement. The governing body has decided that sisters may choose to wear slacks,
But also because they've rehauled their entire disfellowshipping and shunning system after the massive hit they took in Norway, of which I've made a few videos about. Now elders will really try not to disfellowship minors. Disfellowshipping also was rebranded to removal of the congregation, and the term judicial meeting and judicial committee, terms to refer to the group of elders who judge whether or not to remove a Jehovah's Witness, including minors, were also changed to more generic terms like Committee of Elders. All in all, the new version of this book has a notable shift in language. They completely rewrote everything to go from a more procedural and legal tone to a more pastoral and shepherding tone. Now, most of the rules have not changed, just how they talk about them. For instance, instead of talking about how to prepare, hold, announce, and schedule judicial hearings, dedicating separate chapters for disassociation and for reinstatement, the new version consolidates both chapters and instead emphasizes things like leading individuals to repentance and helping individuals return to the congregation. It's still about reinstatement, but it's covered in this pastoral and flowery language that really annoyed me when I was reading it. This is probably because they're tired of reading their own incriminating words quoted back to them by judges and lawyers from all over the world. By obfuscating the words and making the terms more loose, they get more leeway to lie to the court and minimize shunning and its effects when they get questioned in court about it. Most of the manual is a rewrite in that spirit, removing and streamlining wording almost exclusively to make it sound less incriminating. And is really notable in chapters like the one dedicated to determine whether a committee of elders needs to be formed. The previous version had it at chapter 12 and was all about judicial committees and when they're needed to handle misconduct. The new version has it at chapter 6, and it's a far more streamlined version of the same process, painted with this new, less incriminating and less accurate choosing of terms. But the rules remain pretty much identical. They're only rebranded and obfuscated, and it's even more infuriating when you see the rebranding of judicial hearings. The previous version dedicated 3 whole chapters, 15, 16, and 17, to explain how elders should get together, collect evidence, and judge other Jehovah's Witnesses. This was a detailed look into exactly what the elders should and should not do whenever they were determining whether to kick someone out or not. The new version, however, consolidates all these 3 chapters into one. Chapter 7, now infuriatingly rebranded to Leading Individuals to Repentance, treads pretty much the same grounds. All the rules are pretty much still there. It simply isn't going as far as it used to, telling elders exactly how to prepare for judicial meetings and how to judge others. Instead, this is our first look into the centralization of the doctrine. The manual makes it clear that elders need to contact the local branch to determine stuff, especially when the manual is silent. The answer to this problem by this cult is usually illegal cover-up. And that is why those are no longer in the manual, because by putting their policies on paper, they make it easier to prove that the issues inside this religion are not a matter of just a few rogue elders going bad, but it's an institutional matter with illegal cover-ups required by the organization. The same thing happens with disassociation and reinstatement. Before, each had its own chapter, one explaining disassociations and one explaining reinstatements and how elders should handle them. But now, disassociated individuals are treated alongside disfellowshipped ones. If you're out of the cult, you're out, regardless of whether you renounce the cult or if the cult renounced you. And the procedure to get reinstated as a Jehovah's Witness is now the same. This has also been painted with more pastoral language, despite the procedure being essentially the same. The person needs to talk to the elders need to get together and judge whether the person should be allowed back in a hearing to hear them out, and then the elders need to make a decision. Except now, they're permitted more than one hearing with the person. And with that, we finally get to the worst chapter in the entire book, the chapter about CSA. The previous booklet had this line saying that people who learn about CSA might be obligated to report it to the authorities and definitely need to contact the legal department. This got them in a lot of heat with the authorities because nobody likes to think that they are the exception to reporting CSA to the authorities, when this cult actually thinks everyone is the exception and they should never report CSA to anyone ever. So the new manual comes with a huge revision on this. Now, it says that elders should comply with reporting laws and will not shield anyone from the authorities, ending on how they're free to report allegations to the secular authorities and how they cannot criticize anyone who does so. This, at first look, solves the problem. After all, this is definitely an improvement over the previous wording, making it clear that people are free to report CSA to the authorities, but it is still not enough. Because in a cult, it's not about what you're free to do. It's about what the cult tells you you should do. In a cult, for instance, you're technically free to leave at any time. Anyone inside a cult would tell every outsider precisely that. Only people inside the cult know that what they're free to do isn't always what they're expected to do. And nowhere in this manual says that you're expected to report CSA or any other crime to the authorities. It's all in a passive voice. They're free to do so if someone reports it, that they are not to be criticized. But it still leaves it up to the person instead of making it a policy to report it to the authorities. Now, you may think, but Caleb, come on, it says right there that elders are to comply with CSA laws. And yes, that is correct. And sadly, for a lot of judges and juries, that will be enough. But believe it or not, very few places, both in and out the United States, actually have mandatory reporting laws. And when they do have them, they often have a clergy exception that the Jehovah's Witnesses can exploit. You know what definitely is policy in this manual, though? To call the people who know about these reporting laws and exceptions, the service department of the branch, who might even get you in touch with the legal department of the branch. This manual leaves it up to the person to report the worst kind of crime to the authorities, often making a difference between stopping and perpetuating, but it makes it mandatory to report the exact same crimes, not to the police, but to the branch. Why? Well, so the cult can try its very best to cover it up, of course, by making it mandatory to immediately report it to the service department, which no doubt will happen before anyone even thinks of calling the police. The elders calling the service department can get in touch with anonymous cult workers in the branch who will look up the mandatory reporting laws and their exceptions. There's this line saying elders need to comply with the laws, but where will elders learn what the laws are? Well, by calling the service department. That's how every single elder will find out what the laws are, and therefore whether they're obligated to report it to the police or not. By calling the service department, they can simply get told that they do not need to report it because the laws don't force them to, and get reminded that even though they are free to do so, reporting this crime can and will bring reproach to Jehovah's name. Bringing reproach to Jehovah's name is one of the worst things that you can do as a Jehovah's Witness, and something every Jehovah's Witness is instructed to never ever do, so they can simply go without reporting it. And since we've seen cases in the United States of how this goes, we know that the service department might tell elders that the law doesn't force them to report anything when the law does. Thus, we achieve two things. This cult gets to keep CSA hush-hush like it always has, and it also gets to have it in writing that elders need to comply with the law. That way, even if a case goes to court where this religion told the elders that they were not under a legal obligation to report it when they actually were, this cult can simply point to this line and pretend it's a one-time mistake and not their organizational policy. And if you think I'm exaggerating, think again, because it's in how this manual instructs elders to deal with CSAM that we show just how little this cult cares about children. Viewing CP is still a serious violation of Jehovah's standards. Depending on the frequency and the extent of the wrongdoing, the matter could be handled by means of strong counsel. Engaging with CSAM alone is a crime in most countries, but since the laws are more murky in multiple places about whether mandatory reporting involves reporting someone involved with CSAM, this manual completely underplays it. Instead, viewing CSAM can simply be seen as a slip-up for which an elder might not even need to involve the other elders. As long as the elder doesn't personally believe it's been too frequent, then the elder can simply strongly suggest to the criminal to stop doing it and just be done with it. It's only if the elder deems it necessary to consult with other elders that the matter escalates, and they need to call not the police, of course, but the service department. Contacting the police isn't even mentioned here, almost as if they want to avoid elders even thinking about it. After all, elders know that they should always contact the service department first, and the service department can instruct them on how to handle it, however they want. Since this religion hasn't actually gotten into trouble with the courts yet for their CSAM tolerance, this policy hasn't changed. This cult only cares about saving their asses in court and does not care even a little bit about children, especially if they perceive that they could have a better PR if they hide criminals instead of reporting it. This is what has gotten the most amount of attention from other apostates, and with justified reason, since this is the most blatant proof that this cult cares not about children or their well-being, but about their policies. However, I wouldn't consider this the clearest affront to legal authorities. Instead, that comes in the last chapter that has a big revision, the chapters on legal matters and public information, which have been merged into the new chapter 12. Here, you'd expect to see this cult exhorting elders to contact the authorities to report any crimes and to cooperate with them so they can bring criminals to justice. Or at least, that's what you would expect if this wasn't a cult. Because the last chapter tells elders not to cooperate with the authorities. This chapter introduces a completely new change. Now, they have a very explicit rule on confidentiality. You see, when a Jehovah's Witness confesses to an elder of a sin, anything from fapping to CSA, the elder is considered to have gotten that information in confidence. Everything that happens in private with someone acting as an elder or a group of elders in this religion is considered to have happened in confidentiality. That means that if someone committing CSA or any other similar crime tells an elder that they've been committing those crimes, then they told the elder or elders that in confidence. This even covers an entire elders meeting where they're discussing whether or not to disfellowship someone at fault of CSA, even when they're calling the branch. And what does this chapter say? Well, it says that if elders are complied by the authorities to disclose confidential information, instead of cooperating with the authorities who are forcing them to reveal that information, they should contact the local branch. This manual makes a special emphasis on how elders should go above and beyond to protect confidentiality, even when being asked by the authorities to disclose information. Now, why would they add that if their effort was to cooperate with authorities? If this cult wanted elders to obey the law and to cooperate with the police with bringing criminals to justice, then why does it say right here that you need to contact the branch when it comes to divulging confidential information, even if the authorities are directly asking them to? No, this line makes it clear that even when cooperating with the authorities, they have to do their best to say as little as possible to them, because their priority is not to cooperate with them. Their priority is to keep things quiet, even when working with the authorities. This is a substantial revision of the previous Elders Manual that again only improves things cosmetically while refusing to make any substantial changes to the cult. This book simply obfuscated what elders are meant to do, using clever wording to indicate elders that the rules are basically the same, while avoiding properly nailing the rules down and covering them up in a heavy paint of pastoral, flowery language. Instead, they're centralizing everything, and instead of telling elders exactly how to do the illegal things that they're expected to do, they're asking elders to call the branch so they can tell elders in a non-recorded phone call with an anonymous person how to do the illegal things that they're expected to do. This is a full rewrite, and the objective is a very clear one: legal camouflage. They've put a considerable amount of effort rewording and reorganizing the manual to minimize any phrases that any court could treat as admissions of a formal internal judicial process. That way, the process looks less like the punitive process that it is, and it looks more like simply pastoral care. Now they can do the same stuff that they've been doing while making it harder for any court to prove that that's what they're doing. What are they going to do now that the wording has changed? Record every call the service department has to prove the hiding of criminals is institutionalized? Even when the elders are told that they should not shield anyone from legal consequences, they're reminded that they are not supposed to say anything considered confidential despite the authorities directly asking them about it, drastically limiting what the elders can and cannot say to the authorities if they decide to report criminal activity. Because what didn't change is the two-witness rule, for example, since, although not directly mentioned, there is nothing in contradiction to it. The elders have to contact the branch before even deciding to contact the authorities, and even if they're working with them, they're still bound to confidentiality rules. This is nothing but a disgusting attempt from this cult to obfuscate the rules to make them more opaque and harder to pin down, while keeping the rules active and as intact as possible. I was really hoping I could give you good news on this, but unfortunately, this is exactly what we've come to expect from this cult. Cosmetic changes to try to avoid getting into legal trouble while refusing to actually change or improve anything. And this is why I've spent the last 3 days obsessively going back and forth with the manuals to show you what the rewrite actually says, and to hopefully shine light on the latest tactic this cult is using to shield criminals and to try to get away with it. If you think this is worth supporting, please check whether you're subscribed and consider helping me out like these amazing guys over here on Patreon or YouTube. It really goes a long way and allows me to spend more time studying this cult and showing you the truth about the truth.